Donald Trump walks into a border outpost. What he does next leaves everyone stunned. The officers stationed at the checkpoint paid little attention. Just another routine day, long hours, few resources, and little support. Then, out of nowhere, a convoy of black SUVs appeared on the horizon, speeding toward the outpost. The agents exchanged puzzled glances. "Are we expecting someone?" one officer muttered. No one had an answer. The vehicles came to a halt in a cloud of dust. Before anyone could react, the doors swung open and a familiar figure stepped out. Donald Trump. No press, no campaign banners, no staged speeches. Just Trump walking toward them with purpose. He extended a hand to the nearest officer. "What do you guys need?" The officers stood in stunned silence. What happened next? No one saw it coming. For the men and women working at this isolated border outpost, the days were long, and the nights were even longer. Understaffed, overworked, and constantly facing danger, they had learned to expect little from Washington. Smugglers crossed the border daily, cartels controlled the night, and human trafficking was an ever-present nightmare. Officers worked in brutal conditions, tracking movements in the scorching sun, often without the resources they needed. They weren't just law enforcement. They were first responders, rescuers, and soldiers in an unseen battle. Politicians made promises, but nothing ever changed. They had seen senators, governors, and officials come through before, each one shaking hands, making speeches, and then disappearing back into their air-conditioned offices. So when Donald Trump stepped out of that SUV, they expected the same routine. A few photos, a short speech, and then he'd be gone. But something about this felt different. He wasn't posing for cameras. He wasn't reading from a script. Instead, he walked right up to them, looked them in the eye, and asked a simple, powerful question. "Tell me the truth. What's really happening here?" For the first time in a long time, the officers wondered, was someone finally listening? The border agents stood frozen for a moment, exchanging uncertain glances. Was this real? Was Trump actually asking them what they needed? Not for a camera, not for a speech, but because he wanted to know. One officer, a seasoned veteran with years of experience, cleared his throat. "Sir, we're struggling." Trump turned to him, giving his full attention. No interruptions, no rushed agenda, just listening. Encouraged by the response, the agent continued. "We don't have enough manpower. The cartels know it. They're bringing people across every night, and we can't catch them all." Another officer stepped forward. "We don't have the tech we need. The drones, they're outdated. The security cameras, half of them don't work." A third officer, his voice tight with frustration, added, "The politicians come here, they take pictures, they make promises, but nothing ever changes." Trump nodded, absorbing every word. The frustration, the exhaustion, it was all real. Unlike other officials who had come before, he wasn't just nodding along to be polite. He was engaged, asking sharp follow-up questions. "How often do you guys get backup when things get out of control?" The answer? Rarely. "How much of what you deal with makes it to the news?" They scoffed. Almost none of it. The tension in the air was thick. The agents had told their truth. Now they waited. Most politicians would have responded with a rehearsed speech. But Trump? He did something that left them all stunned. The border agents braced themselves, expecting the same old political response. Empty promises, vague reassurances. But instead, Trump did something no one saw coming. He nodded slowly, pulled his phone from his pocket, and dialed a number right in front of them. The agents exchanged confused glances. Was he actually making a call? Right now? A few seconds later, a voice picked up. A top official in Washington. Trump didn't waste time. "I'm standing here with the border agents. They don't have enough manpower. The tech is outdated. The backup is unreliable. Tell me, why haven't we fixed this?" The agents watched in shock. No cameras, no press, just Trump demanding answers in real time. The official on the other end of the line stammered, fumbling for an excuse. Trump wasn't having it. "No, I don't want a report in a week. I want solutions now. You listening? These guys are on the front lines. Get them what they need." The agent stood there, speechless. For years, they had been ignored, overlooked, used as props for political theater. But now, someone was finally doing something. Trump ended the call and looked around. "This isn't just talk. You'll see results." The air was different now. This wasn't a politician passing through. This was a leader taking action. A heavy silence hung in the air as Trump lowered his phone. The border agents stared at him, still processing what had just happened. One of them finally spoke, his voice laced with disbelief. "Sir, no one's ever done that before." Trump smirked. "Well, maybe that's the problem." He glanced around at the men and women in uniform, their faces weathered by long hours, relentless challenges, and broken promises. "You guys are out here doing real work. It's time Washington did the same." Another officer, still stunned, asked, "Do you really think they'll act on this?" Trump's expression hardened. "They don't have a choice. Not anymore." For the first time in years, hope flickered in the agent's eyes. This wasn't just a speech. This was real action. And for the first time in a long time, they felt like someone truly had their backs. As Trump turned to leave, something had shifted. The border agents, who had grown used to being ignored, stood taller. This wasn't just another political visit. There were no staged cameras, no rehearsed lines. Just a man who listened and took action. Within days, word spread about Trump's visit. Officers at other outposts heard what happened, and suddenly things started to change. Washington couldn't ignore it. Calls were made, reports were pushed forward, and discussions that had been stalled for months were suddenly back on the table. Some called it a publicity stunt. Others said it was the wake-up call the country needed. But for the agents who were there that day, only one thing mattered. For the first time in a long time, they weren't just talking about the problems. Someone was actually doing something about them.